Elowen choked on smoke pinned beneath her brother Thomas's lifeless body, his pale face frozen in a silent scream, blood pooling from a gash across his chest and soaking her trembling hands. Clara's piercing cry, "Elowen, help me!" cut through the roar of flames as bandits in stolen soldier uniforms dragged her away from their burning Dakota village. Her world shattered into ash, leaving only a bloodied scrap of paper clutched in her fist. Elowen, a 19-year-old daughter of poor Dakota farmers, grew up in a world of want and pain. Her father's drunken fists left scars on her body and soul, while her mother's early death forced her to raise her siblings. Clara and Thomas in a crumbling shack, the village shunned their poverty, isolating her further after the brutal attack by bandits disguised as soldiers. Elowen lost her family home and trust in humanity. Wandering the unforgiving Lakota lands, she battles hunger, grief, and the constant fear of being hunted by outlaws or authorities who brand her a criminal. Elowen's fingers shook as she clawed through the smoldering ruins of her village, the stench of ash and blood clogging her throat. Her hands brushed a crumpled, blood-soaked paper, its jagged script mentioning a plan and a name. Whitaker. She froze, heart pounding as heavy boots crunched nearby. A harsh voice barked, "There's the girl who ran with the bandits." Lieutenant Harlan, middle-aged with a cruel sneer, led a squad of American soldiers, their rifles gleaming. One soldier pointed at the knife in her belt, stolen from a fallen bandit, to cut herself free, and shouted, "She's armed like one of them." "Kill her!" Harlan snarled, his eyes glinting with menace. Elowen bolted, legs burning, weaving through the tall grass as shouts and hoofbeats chased her. She dove into a thicket, thorns tearing her skin, breath ragged with panic. A strong hand yanked her into a rocky crevice. "Stay quiet," whispered a Lakota warrior, his dark eyes sharp. He was Matto, and he'd seen the bandits in fake uniforms. "They're hiding something," he muttered, pointing to the soldiers. Gunshots rang out, bullets ricocheting off nearby rocks as Harlan's men fired blindly into the forest. Elowen's chest tightened, fear warring with confusion. Matto pulled her deeper into the shadows, his grip steady but urgent. They barely escaped her mind, reeling from the false accusation and the mysterious letter. She wanted to trust Matto, but doubt gnawed at her. Could she rely on a stranger when her world had just burned down? The paper in her fist felt like her only anchor, its secrets pulling her into danger. Elowen's legs ached as Matto led her through twisting paths to a Lakota camp, the weight of loss crushing her chest. He introduced her to Hoka, a weathered chief with piercing eyes, but before she could speak, a young warrior. Lone Wolf stepped forward, his voice sharp. "She's a white spy," he spat, his glare cutting through her. Elowen shrank back, her hands trembling, feeling like an intruder. A gentle voice broke the tension. Aiyana, Matto's mother, her face kind, but lined with grief, said, "Come, child," guiding Elowen to her tent. Safe for a moment, Elowen's voice cracked as she told Aiyana about the bandits. Thomas's lifeless eyes and Clara's screams. Tears spilled as she whispered, "I couldn't save her." She pulled out the bloodied letter, its words about Whitaker haunting her, and showed it to Hoka, his brow furrowed, suspicion flickering. At a tense council meeting, voices clashed. Some wanted to help others to turn her over to the soldiers. Lone Wolf's shout rang out, "She'll bring death to us all." Elowen's stomach twisted, fear of abandonment surging. She clutched the letter tighter, her only proof of innocence. Hoka raised a hand, silencing the crowd. "She stays until we know the truth," he declared, his tone firm but wary. Relief washed over Elowen, yet she felt like an outsider, her heart heavy with guilt and the desperate need to find Clara, unsure if she could ever belong here. Elowen's resolve hardened as she and Matto slipped back to the village's charred remains, driven to uncover the truth. Behind the letter, her hands sifted through ash, finding a worn leather pouch buried under debris. Inside were letters mentioning a mining company and staged attacks. Her pulse quickened. She realized the bandits who killed Thomas and took Clara were part of a plot to steal Lakota land. "This is bigger than us," she whispered to Matto, her voice shaking with anger. As they hid the pouch, Lone Wolf appeared, his eyes blazing. "You're working for the soldiers," he accused, drawing his knife. Elowen's heart raced, but Matto stepped in his voice. "Steady. She's no spy. Look at the letters." Lone Wolf hesitated, his suspicion unwavering, but agreed to keep quiet. For now. Elowen, gripping the pouch, suggested finding Jeb, a bandit deserter Matto had heard of who might know more. Suddenly, hoofbeats thundered. Bandits, not soldiers, charged toward them, their shouts chilling. Elowen's legs burned as she and Matto sprinted for cover, but a bandit's lasso grazed her arm, nearly yanking her back. Matto's arrow struck the attacker, giving them a chance to dive into a ravine. They escaped, but the pouch tore, scattering some letters. Elowen's chest ached not just from the run, but from the fragile hope slipping away. "We have to find Jeb," she said, her voice firm, despite the fear, knowing each step pulled her deeper into a dangerous web. Elowen's boots crunched on the cracked earth of a deserted town. Her heart racing as she and Matto spotted Jeb, a wiry man with shifty eyes lurking near a crumbling saloon. She stepped forward, voice steady despite her fear, demanding answers about Whitaker. Jeb smirked, dangling a promise of information, but only for something valuable. Elowen's hand tightened around the bloodied letter, her only bargaining chip, but Matto's glare made Jeb flinch. "Talk or you're done," Matto growled, his knife glinting. Jeb's bravado crumbled his voice low as he admitted. Whitaker paid bandits to attack white villages, framing the Lakota. Elowen's stomach churned the truth, hitting like a fist. Thomas's death, Clara's kidnapping, all orchestrated by Whitaker. Jeb, sweating, offered to lead them to a hidden cache of Whitaker's documents. Hope flickered in Elowen's chest, but as they followed him down a narrow alley, shouts erupted. Jeb's men, armed with clubs and pistols, sprang from the shadows, his betrayal. Clear, Elowen's pulse spiked. She grabbed a loose board, swinging it to draw their attention. Yelling, "Matto, now!" Her distraction gave Matto time to tackle one attacker, his fists swift. They fought back to back, but Jeb slipped away in the chaos. As the last thug fell, Elowen found a crumpled note in the dirt. Clara was alive, held in a fort. Her hands shook with fragile hope, but the sting of Jeb's deceit lingered, pushing her to keep fighting. Elowen's heart pounded as she knocked on the door of a small chapel, her breath catching when Sarah, the nun who once bandaged her cuts after the massacre, opened it. Sarah's eyes widened, but she ushered Elowen inside her hands, trembling slightly. Elowen, voice cracking, begged for help, finding Clara, explaining Whitaker's plot to frame the Lakota. Sarah nodded, promising to ask around about Clara's whereabouts and contact a reporter to expose the truth. Elowen's chest lightened, clinging to the kindness in Sarah's voice, but a nervous twitch in Sarah's smile made her pause. Matto, standing guard outside, pulled Elowen aside, his voice low. "She's scared. Don't trust her fully." Elowen brushed off his warning, desperate for an ally. Her hope pinned on Sarah's gentle demeanor. They agreed to meet the next day, but as Elowen stepped into the street, hooves thundered. Harlan's soldiers surrounded her. Rifles raised his sneer, cutting deep. "Your nun friend sold you out," he spat, binding her wrists. Elowen's heart sank, betrayal twisting like a knife. Sarah's fearful glance from the chapel window confirmed it. She'd caved to Whitaker's threats, dragged to a military camp. Elowen's mind spiraled into despair, her body slumping against the cold ground. Clara's face haunted her, and the weight of Sarah's betrayal crushed her spirit. She'd trusted too easily, and now bound and alone, she felt the flicker of hope die, wondering if she'd ever see her sister again. Elowen sat hunched in a damp tent, wrists raw from ropes, as Harlan loomed over her, his voice a venomous hiss. "Tell me what you know about Whitaker. or you're dead by dawn." Her throat tightened, fear mixing with defiance, but she clamped her lips shut, refusing to break. His fist slammed the table, making her flinch, but before he could strike, a shadow moved behind him. A cloaked figure, swift and silent, cut her ropes with a knife, whispering, "Move now." Elowen's legs wobbled as she followed the stranger the messenger through the camp's dark edges, dodging patrolling guards. He led her to a hidden bunker, his voice low but firm. "I'm a former officer. Whitaker's a monster, and I know his secrets." Inside they found stacks of papers detailing mining company deals and lists of fake attacks. Elowen's hand shook as she stuffed a folder into her shirt, hope surging. But shouts echoed outside. Harlan had found them. "Burn it all!" He roared, and flames licked the bunker's entrance. Elowen's chest seized as she grabbed one last document, the messenger pulling her through a side tunnel. They burst into the night, smoke stinging her eyes, but the bunker collapsed behind them. She clutched the single paper, her heart sinking. Most of the evidence was gone, and with it her chance to expose Whitaker. Doubt clawed at her, but the messenger's steady gaze urged her to keep going, even as despair threatened to swallow her whole. Elowen's hands trembled as she stood before the Lakota council, clutching the crumpled document from the bunker, her voice steady despite the ache in her chest. "Clara's alive," she said. "And Whitaker's behind it all." Lone Wolf scoffed, folding his arms, but Hoka's eyes narrowed, his silence heavy with thought. Aiyana stepped forward, her voice soft but firm, suggesting a raid on a small military outpost where Clara might be held. Elowen's heart lifted, and she spent hours under Aiyana's guidance, pulling a bowstring until her fingers bled, feeling a spark of strength. By the fire, Matto's quiet smile warmed her, their hands brushing as they shared a blanket, but neither spoke of the growing bond. Lone Wolf, still distrustful, overheard their plans and muttered doubts to another warrior unaware a soldier's scout was listening nearby. The raid was a disaster. Soldiers ambushed them, rifles blazing, capturing several Lakota warriors. Elowen's arrow missed its mark, and she stumbled back, her breath hitching as shouts filled the air. Guilt crushed her as she saw the captured warriors dragged away, their faces etched with defiance. Back at camp, Lone Wolf's accusing glare burned, and Hoka's disappointed sigh cut deeper. Elowen sank to her knees, tears falling, whispering, "This is my fault." The council's arguments echoed around her, splitting the tribe. Her failure weighed like a stone, leaving her feeling powerless, yet Clara's face in her mind pushed her to try again. Elowen's pulse raced as she and Matto crept through the shadows of Whitaker's main camp, the air thick with tension. Her breath caught when she spotted Clara, pale and frail, locked in a wooden cage, her small hands gripping the bars. Elowen's legs twitched, urging her to run to her sister, but Matto's firm grip held her back, his whisper sharp. "Too many guards." She nodded, heart pounding, and they hid behind crates as Whitaker, tall and cold, strode into view, barking orders about a treaty to force the Lakota off their land. Elowen's fists clenched, overhearing his plan to uproot the entire tribe. A guard's shout shattered their cover. "Intruders!" Elowen's stomach dropped. They sprinted toward the forest, boots pounding, but a gunshot rang out. Matto grunted, blood seeping through his shoulder, his face twisting in pain. Elowen's heart seized, but she hooked his arm over her shoulder, dragging him through the trees as bullets whizzed past. Her muscles screamed fear, driving her forward until they collapsed behind a fallen log safe. For now. She tore her sleeve, pressing it to Matto's wound, her hand shaking as she whispered, "Stay with me." His weak nod steadied her, but Clara's caged figure haunted her thoughts. The treaty's threat loomed, and Matto's blood on her hands fueled her resolve. She couldn't lose him or Clara. With a deep breath, she vowed to face Whitaker again, no matter the cost. Elowen's boots scuffed the dusty street as the messenger found her, his cloaked figure urgent. "We can expose Whitaker," he said, leading her to a bustling town where he introduced her to Daniel, a reporter with ink-stained fingers and a determined glint. Her hand shook as she handed over the last document, her voice breaking as she explained Whitaker's crimes. Daniel's eyes widened, promising a front-page story to ruin Whitaker. Hope flared in Elowen's chest, but Matto's warning about trust echoed in her mind. She ignored the doubt clinging to the chance to save Clara. Days later, a scream drew her to an alley. Daniel lay dead, blood pooling, a knife in his chest. Elowen's knees buckled her breath, hitching as she realized Whitaker's men had struck. The document was gone, her hope snuffed out like a candle. She sank against the wall, tears burning her eyes, whispering, "I failed again." Everything. Clara the Lakota, the truth felt out of reach. She wanted to give up, to disappear into the grief, but the messenger knelt beside her, his voice steady. "Whitaker fears you. That's why he's desperate." His words pierced her despair, stirring a flicker of defiance. She wiped her face, fists clenching Daniel's. Death wasn't the end. It was a reason to fight harder. The messenger's plan to confront Whitaker directly sparked a new resolve in her. She stood nodding, her heart heavy, but determined, ready to face the man who'd taken everything from her. Elowen's fingers gripped the last document as she crouched with Matto and Hoka in a Lakota tent, their voices low and urgent, plotting to strike Whitaker's main camp during his meeting with mining investors. Her heart thumped, but she nodded, ready to confront the man holding Clara. Aiyana, pledged to lead 20 warriors in a diversion, her steady gaze calming Elowen's nerves. She tucked the document into her shirt, jaw clenched when Lone Wolf stepped forward, head bowed. "I was wrong about you," he said. Joining the mission, hope sparked, but as they approached the camp, 60 soldiers patrolled the fences. Harlan's orders, Elowen's stomach churned, yet she signaled to attack Aiyana's warriors, surged forward, war cries piercing the air, arrows slicing through the dusk. Whitaker's men, 50 strong, answered with a deafening volley of rifle fire, bullets splintering wood and kicking up dirt. "Hold the gate." Soldiers bellowed their shouts, drowned by the crack of gunfire. Whitaker stormed from the meeting tent, face red with rage, yelling, "Wipe them out!" His cold voice directed troops as they reloaded their shots, felling 3 Lakota warriors. Elowen and Matto slipped inside, dodging bullets, but a scream halted her. Aiyana, charging with a raised spear, spun as a soldier's bullet tore through her chest. She stumbled, shoving Elowen behind a crate, taking another shot meant for her. Blood soaked Aiyana's shirt, her eyes soft as she gasped, "Keep going." Elowen's tears fell, grief choking her. Hoka, seeing the tide turn, signaled retreat, his warriors dragging 2 wounded comrades through the trees, losing 5 in total. Matto pulled Elowen away, his voice firm. For her, Aiyana's sacrifice seared Elowen's heart, forging her resolve to end Whitaker's reign. Elowen's hands sifted through dusty crates in an abandoned military outpost, her breath shallow as she and Matto searched for more evidence against Whitaker. Her fingers brushed a folded map marked with red X's over white villages, each a site of staged attacks. Her chest tightened, the scale of Whitaker's cruelty sinking in. "He planned this for years," she muttered, voice shaking. Lone Wolf, now a grudging ally, joined them, his knife ready as he scanned for threats. His nod, less hostile than before, eased her tension slightly. As they packed the map, shouts erupted. Harlan's men, rifles raised, burst from the shadows, bullets grazing Elowen's arm. She dove behind a crate, heart racing, but a sealed letter slid from the chaos addressed to her. Inside, a shaky scrawl from an unknown officer detailed Whitaker's mining deals. Hope surged, but a scream cut through. The officer, young and bleeding, lay dead outside Harlan's work. Elowen's pulse spiked as soldiers closed in her fingers, fumbling to hide the letter. "Go!" Matto yelled, shoving her toward a broken window. She scrambled through, thorns tearing her skin narrowly, escaping as Harlan's curses echoed, safe but shaken. Elowen clutched the letter, its secrets vital but dangerous. The officer's death taught her to trust sparingly, yet the map and letter fueled her drive. She exchanged a glance with Matto, her resolve hardening. They'd keep searching no matter how many traps Whitaker set. Elowen's boots sank into the soft earth as she and Matto approached a neighboring Lakota camp, her heart heavy with the need for allies. The chief, a stern man with braided hair, eyed her pale skin with suspicion, his voice cold. Why should we trust a white girl? Elowen's throat tightened, but Matto stepped forward, his words steady as he described Whitaker's plot to steal Lakota land. She swallowed hard, then spoke, her voice breaking as she told of Thomas's death and Clara's kidnapping. Her hands shook, reliving the pain, and the chief's gaze softened. His own loss mirrored in her story. He agreed to send warriors for their fight, a spark of hope igniting in Elowen's chest. But as they prepared to leave, a young warrior's nervous glance caught her eye. Her stomach dropped. He was Harlan's spy. And before she could warn anyone, hooves thundered. Harlan's men charged, swords flashing, scattering the camp. Elowen grabbed Matto's arm, pulling him behind a tent as arrows flew. Her breath came in gasps, fear spiking as she realized their location was betrayed. They sprinted through the chaos, dodging flames and blades, but the chief's shout of retreat faded behind them. Safe in the woods, Elowen's fists clenched, frustration boiling. They'd lost the alliance, and the spy's betrayal stung Matto's hand on her shoulder, steadied her, but failure weighed heavy. She vowed to find another way, her resolve unbroken despite the setback. Elowen's fingers brushed cobwebs as she pried open a rusted chest in an abandoned shack, once a military relay post. Her breath quick with anticipation, Matto stood guard, his eyes scanning the dark. Inside, she found a stack of letters listing staged attacks on white villages, each signed with Whitaker's initials. Her stomach churned, realizing his scheme stretched back years, a calculated web of lies. "We need to get this to a bigger town," Matto urged, his voice low but firm. Elowen nodded, tucking the letters into her jacket, but boots scuffed outside. Bandits, 6 men with scarred faces, burst in, knives drawn, shouting, "Hand it over!" Elowen's heart raced as she and Matto dove behind a table. Dodging a thrown blade, one bandit, older with a limp, hesitated, muttering, "Whitaker paid us to burn those villages." Her eyes widened, hope flaring, but the man's face twisted. He yelled for Harlan's men, betraying them. Soldiers stormed the shack, rifles, blazing bullets, splintering wood. Elowen clutched the letters, sprinting with Matto through a back window glass, cutting her hands. They slid down a muddy slope, escaping as flames consumed the shack. Her chest heaved, despair creeping in as she saw the letters now torn and smudged with mud. The bandits' words echoed a vital clue, but the damaged evidence felt like another loss. She met Matto's steady gaze, her jaw tightening. They'd keep fighting no matter the cost. Elowen's steps faltered as she walked beside Matto, her mind replaying his silence about his past, a seed of doubt growing. "Why didn't you tell me everything?" She snapped, her voice sharp with hurt. Matto stopped, his eyes soft but pained, and said, "I wanted to spare you more grief." His honesty softened her, and she hesitated, then spoke of her father's fists, the scars hidden under her sleeves. Her voice broke, and Matto's hand brushed hers, a silent promise. They agreed to send the damaged letters to a reporter. Hope flickering, Lone Wolf appeared, his usual scowl gone, offering to scout the route. Elowen's brows lifted, surprised, until he spoke quietly. "Soldiers took my sister like Clara." Her heart ached, connecting their pain. As they moved through a ravine, a trap sprang. Harlan's men, 10 strong, opened fire, bullets kicking up dirt. Elowen's arm burned, grazed by a shot, and she dropped to the ground, gasping. Matto dragged her behind a rock, his arrows flying, while Lone Wolf tackled a soldier. They fought free, but Elowen's wound throbbed, blood seeping through her sleeve. She gritted her teeth, refusing to stop, Matto's steady hand on her shoulder. and Lone Wolf's nod forged a tighter bond. The ambush hurt, but it sharpened her focus. Clara was out there, and Elowen's trust in her allies grew, pushing her to press on, despite the pain and danger. Elowen's pulse hammered as she and Matto cornered Jeb in a deserted mining camp, his gaunt face pale with fear. "Please don't hurt me," he begged, hands raised, promising news of Clara. Elowen's eyes narrowed, distrust burning, but she nodded, letting him speak. He stammered that Clara was locked in Whitaker's northern fort, his voice shaky but convincing. Her heart leaped, but doubt lingered, remembering his last betrayal. Matto pressed a knife to Jeb's throat, growling, "Take us there now." Jeb nodded frantically, leading them through rocky trails, but Elowen watched his every move, her hand on her dagger. At dusk, Jeb bolted, sprinting toward a ravine. Before Elowen could chase him, a gunshot rang out. Jeb fell blood-pooling, shot by one of Whitaker's scouts, hiding nearby. Elowen's breath caught as the scout shouted, alerting the fort's guards. Lanterns flared, and 10 soldiers charged, swords glinting. Elowen's legs burned as she and Matto dove behind boulders, dodging arrows and blades. Matto's quick shots felled 2 guards, giving them a chance to slip into the forest. Her chest heaved, fear mixing with relief as they escaped, Jeb's words about the fort echoing. The traitor was dead, but his information was gold. Elowen's hands shook, Clara's face vivid in her mind. She glanced at Matto, his nod firm. They had a location now, and nothing would stop her from reaching her sister. Elowen's hands shook as she traced a crude map spread across a Lakota tent, her eyes locked on Matto's steady gaze while they planned to infiltrate Whitaker's northern fort. To free Clara. Aiyana slid a worn parchment forward, her fingers pointing to hidden trails she'd known for years. Her voice calm but urgent. Lone Wolf, his jaw tight, volunteered to join, muttering, "I owe you." Elowen nodded gratitude, mixing with resolve, and spent hours with Aiyana practicing dagger thrusts until her arms ached, the blade's weight boosting her confidence. Scouting the fort revealed 30 soldiers patrolling its walls, their lanterns casting long shadows. Elowen's stomach knotted, but she whispered, "We can do this." As they prepared, a young Lakota warrior slipped away, his eyes darting nervously. Her heart sank. He'd betrayed them to Harlan. The plan unraveled as soldiers swarmed rifles, cracking shouts of "trap them" echoing Elowen's breath, hitched dodging bullets as she and Matto sprinted toward a drainage ditch. Lone Wolf tackled a guard, but more closed in, their blades glinting. Elowen's legs burned, pulling Matto with her as they dove into the ditch, mud soaking their clothes. They escaped, hearts pounding, but the fort's gates slammed shut, their chance to save Clara gone. Elowen's fists clenched, frustration boiling over. She'd trusted the wrong person again, and the failure stung. Matto's firm nod urged her on, but the weight of the botched plan pressed heavy, pushing her to find another way. Elowen's boots slipped on loose rocks as she and Matto fled through a narrow valley. Harlan's mocking laugh echoing behind them. "Run, little rat," he taunted, his horse's hooves thundering closer, 10 soldiers at his heels. Her lungs burned, fear spiking, but Matto grabbed her arm, shoving her toward a cave's dark mouth. "Go," he hissed, turning to fire arrows at the pursuers, drawing their fire. Elowen stumbled inside her hand, scraping rough stone, panic clawing at her chest. Her fingers found a hidden passage, narrow but passable, and she called for Matto, her voice desperate. He dove in, blood trickling from a graze on his cheek, and they crawled through dirt crumbling around them. Emerging in dense woods, they staggered forward, disoriented branches snagging their clothes. A cloaked figure stepped from the shadows, the messenger, his voice low. "This way." Elowen's heart raced, but she followed, trusting his steady pace. Hooves pounded nearby, Harlan's shout, "Find them!" chilling her blood. The messenger led them through a concealed trail, his steps silent until the soldiers' cries faded. They collapsed, gasping as Harlan's men turned back. Thwarted, Elowen's hands shook relief, flooding her, but the messenger's piercing gaze held her. "I'm with you," he said, his words a lifeline. She nodded, her fear easing, realizing his knowledge of Whitaker's schemes made him vital. Clara was still out there, and with the messenger's help, Elowen felt a spark of hope reignite. Elowen's shoulders slumped as she and Matto trudged back to the Lakota camp. Her voice heavy as she told Hoka of the failed fort raid. Hoka's eyes blazed, his fist slamming the ground at the traitor's betrayal, but he met Elowen's gaze, nodding. "You're one of us," he said, his trust anchoring her. Aiyana gathered the tribe for a quiet ritual, her hands guiding Elowen to kneel by a fire, whispering words of strength. Elowen's throat tightened, confessing her terror of losing Clara forever. Tears falling as Aiyana's warm embrace steadied. Her lone wolf stepped forward, his voice firm. "I'll fight for your sister." His loyalty warmed her, easing her guilt. As the fire crackled, a scout delivered a sealed letter from Whitaker, his scrawl threatening Clara's death, unless Hoka signed the land treaty. Elowen's heart stopped, her hands trembling as she read aloud. "She's just a child." Hoka's face hardened, ready to yield, but Elowen stood, voice fierce. "He's bluffing to break us. We fight." Her words sparked defiance in Hoka's eyes, and the council roared approval, their shouts shaking the tent. Elowen's chest swelled, the weight of leadership settling on her. The tribe's resolve mirrored her own, but Clara's fate loomed large. She gripped Aiyana's hand, drawing strength, knowing the fight ahead would test them all. With the tribe united, Elowen felt a surge of responsibility, determined to save her sister and stop Whitaker's tyranny. Elowen's boots scuffed the dusty street of a small settler town, her heart pounding as she and Matto approached a group of weathered farmers gathered outside a tavern. Their faces etched with grief mirrored her own loss, and she stepped forward, voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. "Whitaker's bandits burned your homes like mine," she said, recounting his scheme to frame the Lakota and steal their land. The settlers' eyes widened, murmurs rising, and one man, Amos, leaned in, his voice low. "I know a secret tunnel into his fort." Elowen's pulse quickened, hope flaring, as Amos sketched a map pointing to a hidden entrance under the fort's walls. She gripped the map, gratitude swelling, but Matto's wary glance made her pause. They followed Amos to a nearby barn to plan, but his nervous fidgeting set her nerves on edge. Suddenly boots thundered outside. Soldiers 20 strong surrounded them, rifles cocked. Harlan's sneer gleaming. "Your friend works for us," he spat, as Amos averted his eyes, guilt written on his face. Elowen's heart sank, betrayal stinging. She grabbed Matto, diving through a loose board in the barn's wall. Bullets splintering wood behind them, they sprinted into the woods, lungs burning, narrowly escaping, safe but shaken. Elowen tore the map in half, her trust in settlers shattered. Matto's firm nod urged her on, but the sting of deceit lingered, pushing her to rely on the Lakota alone. Elowen's hands trembled as she knelt in the Lakota camp, sketching a new plan with Matto, her voice firm despite the weight of past failures. Aiyana leaned over her finger, tracing the secret tunnel from Amos's map, her calm suggestion to use it sparking hope. Lone Wolf returned, sweat on his brow, bringing 10 new warriors from nearby tents. Their eyes fierce with resolve, Elowen trained with them, practicing swift strikes and silent signals, her muscles aching, but her confidence growing. A scout's report chilled her. Whitaker had doubled the fort's guards now, 40 strong. Her stomach knotted, but the messenger appeared, his cloaked figure urgent, Whitaker's overconfident. "His guards neglect the tunnel," he said, his words igniting a plan. As Elowen rallied, the warriors' shouts broke the night. Harlan's men, 15 riders, charged the camp torches, blazing arrows cutting down 2 Lakota sentries. Elowen's heart raced, grabbing a bow and firing back her arrow, grazing a soldier. Hoka's war cry rallied the tribe, driving Harlan's men back, but the loss stung. Elowen's chest heaved, guilt gnawing at her for the fallen, but she met Aiyana's steady gaze. "We adapt," she said, adjusting the plan to hit the tunnel at dawn when guards were tired. The attack had shaken her, but the messenger's insight and the tribe's resilience fueled her. She wouldn't let Harlan's raid stop her, her eyes fixed on saving Clara. Elowen's breath hitched as she led Matto and Lone Wolf through the fort's secret tunnel, their steps muffled in the damp dark, avoiding the 30 guards above. Her heart leaped when she pushed open a trapdoor, revealing Clara in a cramped cell, her pale face lighting up. Elowen. Clara whispered, clutching her sister's hand, tears brimming. Elowen's throat tightened, cutting the lock with her dagger, but Clara's frail frame worried her. As they crept toward the tunnel, a guard's shout rang out. Intruders. Soldiers swarmed, swords drawn, and Elowen's pulse spiked. Clara, clinging to her, stammered, "I heard Whitaker talk about a treaty to take all Lakota land." Elowen's eyes widened, the revelation burning, but footsteps thundered closer. Harlan blocked their path, his grin cruel. "You're mine now," he snarled, lunging with a blade. Elowen shoved Clara behind her, parrying with her dagger, sparks flying. Matto tackled a guard, and Lone Wolf's arrows felled 2 more, but Clara gasped a shallow cut on her arm from a stray blade. Elowen's heart clenched, fear surging, but she grabbed Clara, sprinting for the tunnel. Matto and Lone Wolf held off the soldiers, their shouts fading as Elowen emerged outside, Clara trembling in her arms. They'd escaped, but Clara's wound and Harlan's pursuit gnawed at her. The treaty's threat loomed, and Elowen's worry for her sister deepened, yet she vowed to keep fighting, fueled by Clara's fragile strength. Elowen's arms cradled Clara as she and Matto hurried back to the Lakota camp, her heart racing with relief, but heavy with worry over her sister's pale face. Clara winced the shallow cut on her arm, bleeding through a makeshift bandage, and Elowen's throat tightened, pressing a cloth to the wound. By the fire, Clara's voice trembled, recounting her days in the fort's dark cell, fed scraps and taunted by guards. Elowen's chest ached, tears burning, as she stroked Clara's hair, whispering, "You're safe now." Aiyana knelt beside them, her gentle hands applying a pungent herbal paste to Clara's wound, her calm presence easing Elowen's fear. Clara's eyes flicked up, her voice, soft but urgent. Whitaker talked about a deal with miners to take all the land. Elowen's pulse quickened, realizing Clara held vital secrets. They planned to use her knowledge to expose Whitaker, but shouts shattered the night. Harlan soldiers, 20 strong, stormed the camp, torches blazing, yelling, "Take the girl!" Elowen shoved Clara behind her, drawing her dagger as arrows flew. She sashed at a soldier protecting Clara, while Matto and Lone Wolf fought back, but 3 Lakota warriors fell, their cries piercing Elowen's heart. Sank guilt surging, but she held Clara close, fending off attackers until Hoka's men drove Harlan back. The camp mourned, and Elowen's resolve hardened. Clara's information was a weapon, and she'd wield it despite the cost to end Whitaker's reign. Elowen's breath came in short gasps as she and Matto, disguised in stolen soldier uniforms, slipped into Whitaker's fort, their faces shadowed under wide-brimmed hats. Her heart pounded as they navigated past guards, her eyes scanning for the office Clara described. She pushed open a heavy door, finding a desk piled with papers. Her fingers rifled through, uncovering a ledger detailing Whitaker's payments to a mining company for Lakota land. Her hand shook, hope surging, but a young officer burst in, his pistol raised. "Who are you?" he demanded. Elowen froze, her dagger half drawn, but the officer's eyes softened. "I hate Whitaker," he whispered, lowering his gun and shoving them toward a side exit. Her pulse raced, stunned by his aid, but shouts echoed. Harlan's voice roared. "They're here," as he led 15 soldiers, rifles cocked, chasing them through the fort's corridors. Elowen's legs burned, clutching the ledger as Matto knocked over barrels to slow their pursuers. The officer guided them to a hidden gate, but a shot rang out, felling him. Elowen's stomach lurched, but she sprinted with Matto into the night bullets grazing the ground. They collapsed in a ditch, safe but breathless. The ledger intact, the officer's sacrifice weighed heavy, but the document's proof of Whitaker's crimes reignited Elowen's hope. She met Matto's gaze, her jaw set. This evidence could ruin Whitaker, and she'd make sure it reached the right hands, no matter the danger. Elowen's fingers fidgeted as she and Matto met a grizzled courier in a quiet tavern, her voice low, as she handed him the ledger, begging him to deliver it to a reporter in a larger town. The courier, squinting at the papers, nodded, promising to reach the newspaper by dawn. Elowen's chest tightened, fear gnawing that Whitaker's men might intercept it. She and Matto trailed the courier from a distance, watching for threats, and spotted two of Whitaker's scouts lurking near the town's edge, their eyes fixed on the newspaper office. Her heart sank, realizing Whitaker was one step ahead. The messenger appeared, his cloaked figure, a relief whispering. The reporter. "Eliza is my old friend. She'll fight for this." Elowen's hope flickered, trusting Eliza's resolve, but dread grew as they waited. At midnight, a cry echoed from the newspaper office. Elowen ran, her stomach dropping as she found Eliza slumped over her desk, a knife in her back, the ledger gone. Her knees buckled, despair crashing over her like a wave. "Not again," she choked, tears falling as the messenger pulled her away from the scene. Whitaker's men had struck, silencing another ally. Elowen's fists clenched her grief, turning to rage. The loss cut deep, but the messenger's steady hand on her shoulder urged her to keep going. She wiped her eyes, vowing to find another way to expose Whitaker. Her determination burning brighter despite the crushing blow. Elowen slumped against a tree, her knees sinking into the dirt, tears streaming as the weight of Eliza's death crushed her. Every step, every loss felt pointless. Her whispered, "I can't do this anymore," barely audible. Matto knelt beside her, his hand firm on her shoulder. Voice. "Steady. Clara needs you. The Lakota needs you." His words stirred her, a faint spark in her chest. Back at the camp, Aiyana lit a small fire, guiding Elowen to sit, as she chanted softly, her hands brushing sage smoke over her, calming her trembling. Lone Wolf stood nearby, his usual scowl gone. "I was wrong to doubt you," he said, pledging his bow to her cause. Elowen's heart lifted, and she stood wiping her face, vowing to face Whitaker head-on. The messenger slipped into the circle, his eyes glinting as he pulled a folded paper from his cloak. "I kept a copy of the ledger," he said, handing it to her. Her breath caught hope surging, but hooves thundered outside. Harlan's men, 15 strong, charged the camp swords flashing, shouting, "Find the girl!" Elowen grabbed Clara, sprinting for cover as arrows flew, her heart pounding. Matto and Lone Wolf fought back, but 2 tents burned, and Elowen's legs burned. As she fled with Clara safe in the woods, her chest heaved, fear turning to fury. The ledger in her hand was a weapon, and Harlan's attack only sharpened her resolve for the final fight. Elowen's hands steadied as she huddled with Matto and Hoka in the Lakota camp, their voices low as they planned to strike Whitaker's main camp during his investor meeting. Her jaw clenched, picturing Clara's face, and they agreed to exploit the gathering's chaos. Aiyana suggested a 2-pronged attack, one group hitting the gates to distract another, sneaking inside her calm strategy, grounding Elowen. She trained with the warriors, practicing quick dodges and spear thrusts, sweat dripping as her confidence grew. Lone Wolf led a scouting party, returning with grim news. Whitaker's camp bristled with 50 soldiers. Elowen's stomach twisted, but she nodded, adjusting their plan. As they prepared, a scout revealed Whitaker had captured one of their spies who'd spilled details of the attack. Elowen's heart sank, realizing Whitaker had bolstered his defenses, adding 10 more guards. The camp buzzed with tension, warriors sharpening blades, but Elowen caught Lone Wolf's eye, his nod firm. "We're still in," he said. She reworked the plan, splitting their forces to confuse the enemy, her voice steady despite the setback. Harlan's spies had hurt them, but the captured warrior's sacrifice fueled her. She gripped her dagger, Clara's freedom and the Lakota's land at stake. The odds were steep, but Elowen's resolve burned bright her training and Aiyana's wisdom pushing her to lead the charge no matter what Whitaker threw at them. Elowen's breath fogged in the cold as she and Matto led a dozen warriors through a hidden tunnel into Whitaker's camp. Their steps silent to avoid the 40 patrolling guards. Her heart raced the ledger tucked in her shirt as they emerged near the meeting tent. Where Whitaker's voice droned to investors, she signaled Matto to wait, her fingers brushing the document she'd used to expose him. Outside, Lone Wolf's group struck their war cries and clashing blades, drawing guards to the main gate, shouts of attack echoing. Elowen slipped into the tent, her eyes scanning for a chance to reveal the truth. But a guard's shout froze her. "She's here!" Harlan's voice cut through his boots, storming toward her, sword drawn. Her stomach dropped, trapped in the open, and she bolted, dodging a swinging blade. Harlan's men, 10 strong, blocked her path, their laughter cruel. "No escape now," Harlan snarled, lunging Elowen's dagger. Parried, sparks flying, but her arm burned from the effort. Matto burst through, tackling Harlan, his fists pounding as he yelled, "Run!" Elowen sprinted, heart pounding, but the warriors scattered, separated in the chaos. She dove behind a crate, safe but alone. Her breath ragged, Matto's rescue saved her, but the group split, left her shaken. The ledger pressed against her chest, a reminder of her mission, and she gritted her teeth, determined to regroup and face Whitaker no matter the odds. Elowen's boots skidded on the wooden floor of Whitaker's camp hallway, her heart pounding as Harlan loomed ahead, his sword glinting under torchlight. "Still scurrying, little rat," he sneered, his voice dripping with scorn as he swung the blade, grazing her sleeve. Elowen's breath hitched, but she gripped her dagger. Parrying his next strike, sparks flying as metal clashed. Her arms burned, fear surging, but she ducked and slashed, nicking his arm, drawing a grunt. Harlan's laugh chilled her, his eyes wild, but footsteps thundered behind. Matto tackled him, pinning his arms, and Elowen kicked the sword away, her hands trembling as they bound his wrists with rope. "You'll pay for this," Harlan spat, his face twisted with rage. As Elowen tightened the knots, he smirked, his voice low. "Clara's not in the cells. She's in Whitaker's private quarters." Her stomach dropped the words. A punch. Clara's face flashed in her mind, but Whitaker's meeting was happening now. The ledger burning a hole in her pocket. Her chest tightened, torn between exposing Whitaker and saving her sister. Matto's steady gaze met hers, his nod firm. "I'll handle Whitaker," he said, gripping his bow. Elowen swallowed hard, her decision clear. Clara came first. She sprinted toward the quarters, her heart racing, trusting Matto to carry the fight, her fear for Clara outweighing the chance to confront Whitaker now. Elowen's fingers fumbled with a rusted lock in a dim corner of Whitaker's camp, her breath catching as she pried open a hidden cell door. Clara sat huddled inside her thin frame, shaking, but her eyes lit up, a sob escaping as she flung herself into Elowen's arms. "I knew you'd come," Clara whispered, tears soaking Elowen's shirt. Elowen's heart ached, noting Clara's gaunt cheeks and trembling hands weakened from weeks of captivity. She lifted her sister, moving fast, but a guard's shout echoed, "Stop them!" 5 soldiers charged, swords drawn, and Elowen's pulse spiked, shoving Clara behind her. Her dagger flashed, blocking a strike, but the odds overwhelmed her. Lone Wolf burst through his arrows, felling 2 guards, his voice sharp. "Move!" Elowen ran, pulling Clara, but her sister slipped a crumpled paper into her hand, whispering, "I stole it from Whitaker's desk." Elowen's eyes widened, but boots thundered closer, trapping them against a wall. 10 more soldiers closing in. Her heart pounded fear for Clara, choking her as swords gleamed. Matto appeared, his bowstring snapping, dropping 3 soldiers, his shout urgent. "This way!" Elowen scooped Clara up, sprinting through a gap he cleared, Lone Wolf covering their rear. They dove into the forest, safe but breathless, Clara clinging to her. The stolen paper burned in Elowen's pocket a new weapon, but her sister's frail state gnawed at her, urging her to protect her at all costs. Elowen's arms tightened around Clara as they reached the Lakota camp, her sister's shallow breaths easing as Aiyana applied herbal salves to her wounds, her gentle touch calming them both. By the fire, Elowen unfolded Clara's stolen paper, her pulse quickening at the sight of Whitaker's signature on a mining contract proof of his betrayal. Her voice shook as she showed Hoka, who nodded, his eyes fierce. "This ends him," he said, rallying warriors to spread the truth. Clara, resting against Elowen, murmured about Whitaker's plans to flee, her words sparking urgency. The messenger slipped into the camp, his cloak rustling, and handed Elowen a sealed envelope, his voice low. More evidence from Whitaker's own men. Her hands trembled, hope surging, but a scout's cry cut through Whitaker's soldiers. 30 strong attacked their torches, lighting the night, shouts of "silence," them ringing out. Elowen pushed Clara behind a tent, grabbing her dagger, her heart racing as arrows flew. Matto and Lone Wolf fought back, their blades flashing. But 4 Lakota fell. Their cries haunting Hoka's war cry rallied the tribe, driving the attackers back. But the loss stung. Elowen's chest heaved the new evidence, and Clara's contract clutched tight, fueling her resolve. The attack was Whitaker's desperate move, and she met Matto's gaze, nodding. They'd use every scrap of proof for the final battle, ready to face Whitaker and end his tyranny. Elowen's hands steadied as she rallied 30 Lakota warriors in the camp, their faces set with determination, her voice firm as she outlined their defense against Whitaker's looming attack. Hoka clapped her shoulder, assigning her to lead a group of 10 to flank the enemy, his trust igniting her resolve. Aiyana stood by a small fire, her voice soft as she prayed for their safety, her hands brushing sage over Elowen, calming her racing heart. Alone with Matto, Elowen's voice cracked, admitting, "I'm scared we'll lose everything." His hand squeezed hers, his quiet. "We're together," easing her fear. Lone Wolf strode up, suggesting a surprise ambush through a hidden ravine, his eyes glinting with strategy. Footsteps interrupted, and Elowen's breath caught as 15 warriors from a neighboring tribe arrived. Their leader nodding, "We heard your fight." Hope surged, but shouts shattered the night. Whitaker's 40 soldiers charged, rifles blazing, yelling, "Burn it all!" Bullets tore through tents, felling 5 Lakota. Their cries, piercing Elowen's heart, raced, leading her group through the ravine, her dagger drawn as they struck from the side, downing 6 soldiers. The camp burned, and her chest tightened at the losses, but she shouted orders, her voice steady despite the chaos. Matto's arrows flew, and Hoka's war cry rallied the tribe. Elowen's group held the line, her fear buried under duty. Whitaker's preemptive strike hurt, but she stood tall, determined to protect the Lakota and end his reign. Elowen's boots pounded the earth as she led her 10 warriors through Whitaker's camp arrows, whistling as they clashed with 20 of his soldiers, their shouts of "Hold the gate!" drowned by Lakota war cries. Matto and Lone Wolf struck from behind their blades, flashing, sowing chaos as 5 soldiers fell clutching wounds. Elowen's eyes locked on Whitaker, standing in the command tent, his cold voice barking orders. She pushed forward, dodging a swinging sword, her heart pounding as she aimed for him, the ledger heavy in her pocket. Whitaker spotted her, yelling, "Surround them!" 30 more soldiers poured in, rifles raised, pinning her group. Elowen's breath hitched, trapped, but Aiyana's group of 15 warriors charged their spears, breaking the line, opening a path. Elowen sprinted, but Whitaker bolted, clutching a satchel of documents, his horse galloping toward the woods. Her legs burned, chasing him alone. Her dagger drawn as she tackled him from the saddle, they crashed into the dirt. Whitaker's fist slamming her jaw, his eyes wild. "You're nothing," he spat, drawing a pistol. Elowen's arm screamed, blocking his shot, the bullet grazing her shoulder, her vision blurred, blood seeping, but she kicked his wrist, disarming him, and pinned him her dagger at his throat. Her strength faltered, nearly succumbing to his counterattack, but Clara's face flashed in her mind, driving her to hold firm, stopping his escape and securing the evidence. Elowen's hands shook as she stood in Whitaker's tent, blood dripping from her shoulder, holding the ledger aloft before 10 skeptical officers. Her voice steady as she read Whitaker's mining contracts. Whitaker, bruised and bound, scoffed. Lies from a traitor, but his voice wavered, sweat beading on his brow. Elowen pressed on, recounting the village massacres and Clara's kidnapping, her words sharp, the ledger's pages undeniable. Matto and Lone Wolf grappled with Whitaker's remaining guards, their grunts and clashing blades filling the tent as they subdued 5 soldiers. The officers' faces hardened, one muttering, "Check those papers." Elowen's chest tightened, hope rising when a mining investor, his suite, pristine, stood his voice firm. "I saw those deals. She's right." Her eyes widened, stunned by the ally. Whitaker's face twisted, and he lunged, breaking free, his hidden knife flashing toward Elowen's throat. Her heart stopped, but Matto dove, tackling him, pinning his arms as Lone Wolf tied him tight. Elowen staggered, her wound throbbing, but she met the officer's gazes, her voice unwavering. "He's done." The lead officer nodded, ordering Whitaker's arrest, his schemes crumbling. Elowen's knees wobbled, relief flooding her, but the pain of her wounds and the fight's toll lingered. Whitaker's empire fell, and Clara was safe. Yet the cost of victory weighed heavy. She leaned on Matto, the ledger's truth, her triumph ready to face what came next. Elowen's boots crunched through the ash-strewn Lakota camp, her heart sinking as she counted 10 warriors bandaged and limping, their faces grim from the battle's toll. Clara sat by a fire, her voice soft but steady, recounting her weeks in Whitaker's cell, each word twisting Elowen's gut with guilt for not saving her sooner. She knelt beside Matto, her voice low, asking, "Can the tribe rebuild after this?" His hand brushed hers, his nod firm, "We will together." Hoka approached, his weathered face softening as he gripped her shoulder. "You stopped the treaty. You saved us." Elowen's throat tightened, but the memory of fallen warriors, their blood on the ground, gnawed at her. She whispered, "I should have done more." A young officer, one of Whitaker's former men, stepped forward, his voice hesitant. "We're investigating the mining company, thanks to your evidence." Her eyes widened, hope flickering, but fear surged as she pictured Whitaker plotting revenge from his cell, her hands clenched, resolve hardening. She couldn't leave Clara vulnerable. Matto's steady gaze met hers, and she nodded, deciding to stay with the Lakota, her sister's safety, her anchor. The officer's promise was a start, but Elowen's worry lingered her mind, racing with thoughts of Whitaker's reach. She hugged Clara close, vowing to protect her new home. No matter what threats loomed, her heart set on healing the tribe's wounds. Elowen sat across from Lone Wolf by a smoldering fire, her shoulders tense as his usual scowl softened. "I was wrong about you," he said, his voice rough, eyes dropping as he spoke of his sister killed by soldiers years ago, his pain raw. Elowen's chest ached, and she shared her own grief, her voice cracking as she described Thomas's death and Clara's screams. Their shared loss bridged the gap, and Lone Wolf's nod felt like a promise. They worked side by side, hammering stakes to repair torn tents, sweat mixing with dust, their silence comfortable as they tied a final knot. Lone Wolf leaned close, his voice low. "I'll guard Clara like my own kin." Elowen's heart warmed, but his next words chilled her. Whitaker had another plan, something about a second company. "I overheard it once." Her pulse quickened, the vague threat unsettling, but Clara's laughter nearby pulled her focus. She couldn't chase shadows now. The camp buzzed with repairs, but Lone Wolf's secret gnawed at her, a puzzle with missing pieces. She gripped a hammer, her mind torn between the new danger and her sister's safety. Clara's smile grounded her, and she decided to prioritize the tribe's recovery. Her hands steady as she worked, but the whisper of Whitaker's hidden scheme lingered, urging her to stay vigilant, ready to uncover the truth when the time came. Elowen's arms ached as she carried bowls of stew alongside Aiyana, her steps careful as she handed food to wounded warriors, their grateful nods warming her despite the camp scars. Clara darted nearby, giggling with Lakota children, her cheeks flushed with new life. Easing Elowen's worry, Matto beckoned her to the woods, his hands guiding hers to set a hunting trap, his quiet praise, your quick, sparking pride. Elowen's heart lifted, a sense of purpose blooming as she found joy in the tribe's rhythm. Hoka gathered the camp for a ceremony, his voice strong as he honored the fallen, their names echoing in the night. Elowen's throat tightened. Aiyana's absence, a fresh wound, but the tribe's unity steadied her. A scout interrupted, delivering a letter from town. Whitaker was locked in a military prison. Her shoulders relaxed, relief washing over her, but doubt crept in her mind, racing with fears of the tribe's future. What if the mining company struck again? She stood, fists clenched, vowing to live for peace and justice, her eyes on Clara's carefree run. The letter was a victory, but the tribe's safety felt fragile. Matto's hand brushed her arm, his presence a quiet strength. Elowen nodded, her commitment to the Lakota solidifying, determined to honor the fallen by building a secure home. Her heart set on protecting this newfound family, no matter the challenges ahead. Elowen's heart skipped as the messenger stepped into the Lakota camp, his cloaked figure casting a long shadow, his voice low with news. Whitaker had been stripped of his rank, locked away. Her shoulders relaxed, but his next words tightened her chest. "The mining company's still scheming," he said, eyes narrowing. Curious, she pressed him about his past, her voice soft but firm. He sighed, recounting how he once served with Whitaker, turning against him when he saw villages burned for profit, his voice heavy with regret. "I'll back you always," he promised, his hand steady on her shoulder. As he turned to leave, he slipped a folded map into her palm, whispering, "Another cache of Whitaker's papers." Her pulse quickened, the map's weight tempting her to chase more secrets, but Clara's laughter nearby grounded her. The tribe needed her, and Clara's safety came first. Soldiers' shouts broke her thoughts, a patrol nearing the camp, their rifles glinting. Elowen's stomach churned, torn between investigating the map and protecting her new home. She tucked the map into her belt, her jaw set, choosing to stay with the Lakota for now. The messenger's nod approved, but the map's promise lingered, a shadow of unfinished business. Clara's small hand in hers anchored her resolve, and Elowen vowed to focus on rebuilding, ready to face any threat to keep her sister and the tribe safe. Elowen stood in the center of the Lakota camp, her voice clear as she addressed the gathered tribe, proposing stronger defenses like watchtowers and hidden traps to shield against future attacks. Her hands gestured, mapping out plans, and Hoka's nod carried weight as he named her an advisor, his trust warming her chest. Clara nearby mimicked Aiyana's, weaving her small fingers, fumbling but determined, her growing strength, lifting Elowen's spirits. By the fire, Elowen leaned close to Matto, her voice soft, sharing dreams of a peaceful life. His quiet smile mirroring her hope. Their moment broke as hoofbeats thundered. 5 American soldiers rode in, their leader barking, "We need Elowen," for questioning about Whitaker. Her heart raced, fear spiking, as Clara clung to her. She stepped forward, voice steady, explaining Whitaker's crimes, her ledger's evidence already shared. The soldier's eyes narrowed, but her calm defiance, backed by Hoka's stern gaze and the warrior's ready hands, swayed them. "We'll leave the leader," grunted, turning away. Elowen's breath eased, relief flooding her, but the soldier's visit rattled her. The tribe's safety hung fragile, and her new role felt heavier. Matto's hand brushed hers, grounding her, and she squared her shoulders, determined to protect the camp. The soldiers were gone, but Elowen knew vigilance was her duty, her heart set on securing the Lakota's future. Elowen sat by the camp's edge, her fingers tracing old scars on her arm, memories of her father's drunken blows flooding back, tightening her throat. Matto settled beside her, his voice gentle as he spoke of his own struggles. Orphaned young and forced to survive alone. His quiet strength easing her pain. She exhaled, resolving to let go of the past, her eyes fixed on the stars, a weight lifting from her chest. The next day she found Clara by the river, her sister's face pale with fear, and taught her to breathe through panic. Their hands clasped tight. Aiyana joined them, her smile warm, urging Elowen to find joy in small moments like Clara's laughter. As they walked back, Clara's voice dropped, admitting she'd tried escaping. Whitaker's fort sneaking past guards before being caught. Elowen's eyes widened, pride swelling at her sister's courage, but worry surged, realizing Clara's strength had grown in ways she hadn't seen. Her heart pounded, marveling at the resilience in Clara's small frame. But the thought of her risking so much shook her. She hugged Clara close, whispering, "You're braver than me." The revelation deepened her resolve, her hand steady as she vowed to shield her sister. Aiyana's knowing nod reinforced her purpose, and Elowen felt a fierce determination to protect Clara's newfound courage, ready to face any threat to keep her safe and nurture her strength. Elowen's fingers brushed Matto's as they sat by the Lakota camp's fire, her voice soft while they planned a new village with sturdy tents and shared gardens, her heart warming at the thought of a home. Hoka joined them, his eyes bright, proposing an alliance with nearby tribes to strengthen their defenses, his words sparking hope. Elowen spent afternoons with Aiyana, stumbling over Lakota phrases, her tongue tripping, but her resolve firm. Aiyana's patient smile encouraging her. Clara bounded through the camp, weaving baskets with other children, her laughter lifting Elowen's spirits. Lone Wolf beckoned her to hunt his bow, steady as they tracked deer, his rare grin sealing their friendship. As they returned, a scout's hushed words froze, her rumors swirled that Whitaker had been freed. Her stomach churned, fear gripping her that his schemes would resurface. She clutched Clara's hand, her mind racing with images of renewed attacks. The tribe's safety hung fragile, and she paced torn between chasing the rumor and protecting her new family. Lone Wolf's nod grounded her, and she decided to investigate, but not at the tribe's expense. She met Matto's steady gaze, her voice firm. "We check, but the camp comes first." The rumor's shadow loomed, but Elowen's commitment to the Lakota held fast, her heart set on securing their future while ready to face any threat Whitaker might pose. Elowen's boots scuffed the muddy streets of a nearby town, her heart pounding as she and Matto slipped into a tavern to probe the rumor of Whitaker's release. A grizzled man, once a mining company clerk, leaned close, his voice low, confirming Whitaker remained imprisoned, but the company was regrouping under new leaders. Elowen's relief mixed with dread, her fingers tightening around her dagger. They followed the man to a back room where he handed her a crumpled report outlining the company's new land-grabbing plans. Her pulse quickened, but the man's next words chilled her, a secret ally. A high-ranking officer was driving the scheme. Her eyes widened, the revelation a jolt, but shadows moved outside. 2 of Whitaker's scouts trailed them, their boots heavy as Elowen and Matto left the tavern. Her heart raced, and she pulled Matto into an alley, dodging the scouts' gaze as they slipped through a market, the report tucked in her jacket. A scout's shout. There sent them sprinting, their breaths ragged as they wove through crowds narrowly escaping into the woods. Safe but shaken. Elowen clutched the report, its details a new threat. The officer's involvement loomed large, and she exchanged a glance with Matto, her jaw set. They'd bring the evidence back, but the scout's pursuit warned her to stay sharp, her resolve hardening to protect the Lakota from this hidden enemy. Elowen's hands steadied as she sat with Hoka poring over the mining report. Their whispers tense as they identified Whitaker's ally. Colonel Brant, a senior officer, Matto leaned in, suggesting they shadow Brant. To gather proof, his voice firm. Elowen nodded, and with Lone Wolf she donned a stolen soldier's coat, her heart thumping as they infiltrated Brant's military camp. Hidden behind supply crates, they watched Brant meet a mining executive, his voice sharp as he discussed seizing Lakota land. Elowen scribbled their words, her hand shaking each phrase, damning. A guard's shout broke her focus. Spies! Brant's eyes locked on her, his face twisting as he barked, "That's Elowen! Seize her!" Her stomach dropped, recognizing her name on his lips. She and Lone Wolf bolted, dodging 10 soldiers, their rifles firing bullets, splintering wood. Elowen's legs burned, her breath ragged as she shoved Lone Wolf through a gap in the fence, his arm grazed by a shot. They stumbled into a ditch, safe but breathless, the notes crumpled but intact. Her chest heaved, fear mixing with relief, but Brant's knowledge of her chilled her. The evidence was gold, but their safety felt fragile. Lone Wolf's grim nod mirrored her resolve, and she gripped the notes, determined to use them against Brant. The close call sharpened her focus, her heart set on protecting the Lakota, ready to face the officer's wrath with proof in hand. Elowen's voice rang out in the Lakota camp, her hands gesturing urgently as she warned of Colonel Brant Whitaker's ally plotting with the mining company. Hoka's jaw tightened, and he barked orders, stationing 20 warriors at the camp's edges, their bows ready. Aiyana lit a fire, her chant soft as she led a ceremony for protection, her hands brushing sage smoke over Elowen, easing her racing pulse. By the river, Elowen sat with Clara braiding her hair, their laughter mingling as Clara recounted a game with camp children. Their bond tightening Elowen's resolve. Matto drilled the warriors, his voice sharp as he taught spear throws, sweat beading on his brow. A scout's shout broke the calm. 8 American soldiers approached their leader, claiming to investigate Elowen for treason. Her heart pounded Clara's hand, gripping hers, but she stepped forward, voice steady, presenting the ledger's evidence against Whitaker and Brant. The leader's eyes narrowed, but her defiance, backed by Hoka's stern glare, swayed him. "We're done here," he muttered, leading his men away. Elowen's breath eased relief flooding her, but the accusation stung, a reminder of her vulnerability. Matto's nod steadied her, and she squared her shoulders, determined to shield the tribe. The soldiers' retreat was a victory, but Brant's threat loomed, pushing her to prepare for the next challenge, her heart set on keeping the Lakota safe. Elowen's hands trembled as she handed Brant's incriminating notes to a new reporter, Margaret, in a quiet town inn, her voice low but firm, urging swift publication. Margaret nodded her pen, scratching, promising a story within days, but Elowen's stomach knotted, fearing the mining company would strike first. Back at Camp Hoka, called for a council with 3 neighboring tribes, his voice steady. Elowen stood before their leaders, her words sharp as she detailed Brant's plans, her ledger waving like a flag, convincing them to unite against the company. Their nods fueled her hope, but a sealed letter arrived, Brant's scrawl threatening her life if she didn't stop. Her pulse spiked, anger flaring as she tore the letter, her voice fierce. "He won't scare me." Hoka's warriors sharpened spears, and the allied tribes pledged 50 fighters, their resolve mirroring hers. She trained alongside them, her muscles aching, but her spirit high, Matto's steady presence anchoring her. The threat hung heavy, but the coalition's strength emboldened her. She met Lone Wolf's gaze, his bow ready, and felt a surge of confidence. Brant's letter was a desperate move, and Elowen's refusal to back down rallied the tribes, her heart pounding with purpose. The article would expose him, but she prepared for war, ready to defend the Lakota and end the mining company's schemes. Her leadership forged in the fire of defiance. Elowen's breath clouded in the dawn chill as she and Matto led 40 warriors to ambush a mining company convoy. 20 soldiers strong, their rifles glinting as they neared the Lakota border. Lone Wolf darted through the trees, his group of 10 loosing arrows to scatter the enemy's shouts of ambush breaking their ranks. Elowen spotted Brant, his officer's coat crisp, barking orders, and she stepped forward, dagger raised, voice cutting through the chaos. "Surrender, Brant." His sneer twisted, and he shouted, "Attack the camp." His men fired bullets tearing earth, but Elowen's warriors held their spears. Felling 5 soldiers, Aiyana's 15 fighters struck from behind, their war cries, sowing panic, dropping 3 more. Brant turned to flee, clutching a satchel of documents, his horse bolting. Elowen's legs burned, chasing him through the brush, her heart pounding as she tackled him, the satchel spilling papers. He swung a pistol, grazing her arm, but she pinned his wrist, her dagger at his throat. "It's over," she gasped, blood dripping. Matto and Lone Wolf caught up, binding Brant. As his men surrendered their rifles, falling Elowen's chest heaved relief. Mixing with pain, the captured evidence a final blow to the company's plans. Brant's defeat secured the Lakota's safety, but her wound throbbed a reminder of the cost. She stood clutching the satchel, her warriors' cheers lifting her, ready to protect the tribe from any lingering threats, her resolve unshaken. Elowen's hands moved gently as she bandaged a warrior's arm, her eyes scanning the Lakota camp where 6 fighters lay wounded. Their groans mixing with the crackle of fires, Clara weaved through the tents, her small hands offering bowls of stew, her shy smile drawing grateful nods, lifting Elowen's heavy heart. By the river, Matto sat close, his voice soft as they planned new tents and a stronger palisade, his steady gaze easing her fears. Hoka approached, his weathered hand on her shoulder, his voice deep. "You kept our land, ours." Elowen's throat tightened, relief flooding her, but the memory of fallen warriors gnawed, whispering doubts about what lay ahead. A scout rushed in, waving a letter from the town's new reporter, her words confirming the mining company's investigation. Sparked by Elowen's evidence, her chest lightened, but the letter warned of rogue company agents still scheming. Her fingers clenched the threat, chilling her a shadow over their victory. The camp's wounds and Clara's fragile frame urged caution, and she met Matto's eyes, nodding. "We stay ready," she said, her voice firm. The article was a triumph, but the lingering danger kept her alert. She hugged Clara, her resolve hardening to protect the tribe, her heart set on rebuilding while watching for new threats, determined to honor the sacrifices that secured their home. Elowen's fingers traced old scars under her sleeve, her breath catching as memories of her father's fists surged, tightening her chest. Matto sat beside her, his voice low as he spoke of losing his family to disease, his eyes distant but warm, drawing her pain into shared understanding. She exhaled, tears falling, and chose to release the past, her heart lighter as she looked to the camp's fires. The next day she guided Clara through the woods, teaching her to name her fears, their hands clasped as Clara's voice steadied, recounting her captivity. Aiyana found them, her smile gentle, urging Elowen to cherish the tribe's warmth, her words a balm. By the fire. Clara's voice dropped, confessing she wanted to stay with the Lakota forever, her eyes bright with conviction. Elowen's heart swelled, tears brimming at her sister's growth, pride mixing with awe. Clara's choice shook her, revealing a strength forged in hardship, and Elowen hugged her tight, whispering, "We'll make this home." The revelation deepened her purpose, her hands steady as she vowed to build a future where Clara could thrive. Aiyana's nod reinforced her commitment, and Elowen felt a fierce resolve to nurture her sister's dreams, ready to face any challenge to ensure a safe, vibrant life for Clara within the Lakota's embrace. Elowen's hands gripped a wooden beam, sweat beading as she and Matto raised a new tent frame, their shared laughter echoing in the Lakota camp. Hoka gathered the tribe, his voice strong, proposing a lasting alliance with 3 neighboring tribes, his vision of unity sparking Elowen's hope. She sat with Aiyana, her fingers fumbling as she learned to weave baskets. The elder's patient guidance deepening her bond with the tribe. Clara danced through a Lakota ritual, her steps confident, her grin infectious, filling Elowen with pride. Lone Wolf nudged her, his bow ready, and they hunted together, their easy banter sealing a friendship forged in battle. As they returned, a scout's whisper chilled her rumors. Claimed, Whitaker's allies were plotting again. Her stomach knotted, fear flaring that the tribe's peace was at risk. She paced, her mind racing, and decided to investigate, her dagger at her side. The rumor's shadow loomed, but the camp's warmth, Clara's laughter, and Matto's steady presence grounded her. She met Hoka's gaze, her voice firm. "I'll check, but we're home." The investigation could wait, but her heart swelled, realizing the Lakota were her family now. She stood tall, ready to protect this new home, her resolve unshaken by whispers of old enemies, her life woven into the tribe's vibrant future. Elowen's heart pounded as she and Matto slipped into a crowded town saloon, their eyes scanning for whispers of Whitaker's release, her dagger hidden under her cloak. A nervous bartender wiping a glass confirmed Whitaker remained behind bars, but his hushed words chilled her. A shadowy figure was pushing his old schemes. Elowen's jaw tightened, and she resolved to send their final evidence, a ledger of mining deals, to the territorial governor. The messenger emerged from the shadows, his voice low, pointing them to a wealthy investor, Marcus Vane, as the mastermind. Her pulse quickened, and she and Matto plotted to confront him, mapping out his office's weak points. They tracked Vane to a lavish manor, but his cold smile greeted them, revealing he'd funded Whitaker's attacks. "You're too late," he sneered, guards circling. Elowen's voice cut through. Demanding he cease, her hand flashing the ledger. "This ends you." Guards lunged, but Matto's arrows dropped too, and Elowen tackled Vane, pinning him as townsfolk, alerted by the commotion, called for the sheriff. Vane's wrists were bound, his curses fading as soldiers dragged him away. Elowen's chest heaved, relief washing over her. The threat dismantled Matto's steady hand on her shoulder, grounded her, but she knew vigilance remained crucial. Vane's arrest was a victory, lifting a weight, yet her eyes turned back to the Lakota, her true home, ready to protect it from any lingering shadows. Elowen stood tall in Whitaker's command tent, her voice steady as she held the ledger high, reading its damning contracts before 20 officers and nervous investors, her words sharp with truth. Whitaker, bound and pale, shouted, "She's lying," but his trembling hands betrayed him. Matto and Lone Wolf wrestled his last loyal guards, their grunts echoing as they pinned 5 men. Clara, freed from her cell, ran to Elowen, her sobs muffled in a tight embrace, tears soaking Elowen's shirt. The officers' faces hardened, ordering Whitaker's arrest, and the mining investors fled their company's plans. Collapsing. Elowen's relief faltered as she knelt by Aiyana's grave, her heart aching for the woman who died for her, but Clara's small hand and Matto's warm presence softened the pain. The Lakota welcomed her as family, their cheers ringing as she joined their fires, her life entwined with Matto's steady love and Clara's bright laughter. Standing before Aiyana's grave, Elowen's voice broke, vowing to live for peace and justice, her tears falling as she clutched a sage bundle. The weight of loss lingered, but her heart swelled with purpose. Clara's safety, the Lakota's land, and Matto's quiet strength were her triumphs forged through relentless fight. She turned to the camp, her home carrying lessons of resilience, unity, and truth, ready to face the future. Honoring Aiyana's sacrifice with every step, her spirit unbroken despite the scars of her journey.